Please welcome the world's most connected human, Chris Dancy.
Hello. How is everyone? I just got told you've been sitting here for a long time, so I'll try to get through mine faster, but it won't make the next one faster. So we're going to talk a little bit about my journey and some of the things I've been through. With a name like the world's most connected man, it's sometimes hard for people to figure out, well, what does that mean and what did you do and what's so provocative about your story. About 12 years ago, I was 320 pounds. I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I had been on antidepressants since I was 18. I was about to turn 40, by the way. I drank 36 cans of Diet Coke a day. Where are my Diet Coke people? You know you're in here. Just things were extremely difficult. But if you looked at my life from the outside, it was pretty good. I had a good job, I had people who loved me, but like physically I was falling apart. And I remember going to my doctor all through my 20s and 30s and up until 40 and said to myself, you know, what's wrong? Why can't I figure this out? So the idea was I wanted to be able to start to understand who I was and what I valued back in 2007 by looking at how I used the tools around me. And as someone who was 40 in 2007, those tools were digital in nature. So the first set of things that I needed to do, because I was in IT my entire life, was I had to think about, well, how would you structure this system? And part of that is getting this data out of your life. But where do you even start to look for data? Well, for me, it was the places where I spent a majority of my time in 2008, and that was social media. So like a lot of people at that time and nowadays, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc., it doesn't really matter, I was online sharing things, posting things, consuming things. And I had to figure out a way to start to extract that information from my life. But more importantly, I had to figure out where do you store all of your life's information. I'm just a regular person. I have no healthcare experience. I have a little bit of IT experience. So where would you store all of your behavior, your day-to-day interactions on social media? It was very simple. I just wanted to see and look up when I was online. The only tool I could think of that had a view of today, a view of yesterday and last week and last year, and a view of tomorrow, and that's going to be important in a little bit, would be a calendar. So I slowly created these programs that would extract anything I did online and move them to my calendar. So if I put a post on Facebook, it got moved to my calendar. This was amazing because it instantly allowed me to see my day and how I was spending my time when I was online, right? You're starting to say, gosh, you're online a lot. Now today in 2019, there's tools to measure how much time you're online, but back then there really wasn't. And I thought to myself, if I could do this for social media, could I do it for other things? What about all the music and television that I'm listening to? What about any time I go on Yelp and complain about something or threaten someone for bad customer service? All the things that are really common nowadays. So I slowly built in routines to extract information out of my computer, out of my laptop, out of anything I could to move it into my calendar. This allowed me to start to see patterns of behavior that were before this invisible. So for example, if I was spending a lot of time online, the only thing that actually got feedback from my friends were negative things. So if I was drunk and smoking and naked at a bar, those posts got lots of likes and comments. And if I said, I'm going to go for a walk today, nobody paid attention. So this idea that how I spent my time online was being reinforced back to me was kind of a mind-blowing. But then it went beyond that. If I binged watched 2 or 3 televisions, I was into the Tudors at this time, I slowly started eating worse during that time and then the next day. But not binge watching television, I was completely fine the next day and my diet was pretty normal. And also, how I treated others just in day-to-day operations was really driven by how I behaved online when it comes to complaining about other businesses. So between 2008 and 2009, I got a lot of this stuff sorted out. In 2010, I thought to myself, I'm starting to understand who I am and what I value and how I need to take it up a level. So I went and I said, how about content? Anytime I build something to share for my job or for my personal life, whether it's a podcast or slides or just something, we put so much content online, I need to understand how that's being consumed. What about work? This is really interesting. If you could just see all the email you receive and all the email you send for work on a calendar, you'd suddenly realize why you feel so stressed out, because it doesn't stop. Even though you're like eating lunch, people are like eating you like zombies digitally, right? So work, how I did work. And then what about money? Where you spend money, how you spend money, what you do for money. My calendar went from something that was completely overrun with hundreds and hundreds of calendars, thousands and thousands of pieces of data, to something that I started color coding. Because at this point, it wasn't just about the massive amount of information I could get into my calendar, it was about visualizing it. But a bigger problem happened in 2010 that we all suffer with, maybe not suffer is a good word, which was the phone. So unlike my computer, a phone is like a big black box. The data that's stored in there is unstructured. So I had to figure out, how does my phone think about who I am and what I value? So I went through and I took screenshots of every single application that had information about me. That's what you're seeing up here. And in those screenshots, I found there were some themes, or like 10 main themes that my phone thought about me and my relationship to the world. But this breakthrough came because as I looked at these applications and I thought about the themes they fell in, I thought to myself, is there some framework that our devices could use to help us understand our behavior better? And of course, I stumbled upon Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is this really simple system that helps you understand kind of how life should be, the problems in life and how they should be sorted out. But I mapped my applications to Maslow's hierarchy of needs so I could start to understand if I was spending time in areas of my life that were just not important for the problems I was having at that time. This was fundamentally important for starting to understand what behavior change was for me and what behavior change meant to the world around me. So I set off to do one of my first habits. On Friday nights, I would come home from work trips, and I would go to the bar and get drunk and get in trouble and all sorts of things. So what I did was I used a geofence with my phone, and as soon as I got to the bar, it started counting. And as I swiped my credit card, if I stayed for more than an hour, a text message from my system would come to me and tell me to go home. Now, because I knew the bartender, if I stayed for another 30 minutes and continued to use my credit card, it would pull her into a group message and tell her to cut me off. And if I ignored that, my friends and family would get photos, because I get naked and take pictures when I get drunk. I used to. I don't do any of this anymore. And send them pictures, and then finally someone would come get me. So I created kind of a software external feedback system to start to get a hold of like my just rampant kind of abusive behavior with the world. By 2012, I had enough information about who I was connecting to online, how I was connecting to them, what I was doing for work, how I was spending my money, how I was spending my time, that I could work on the thing you think most people would work on, which was health, right? How was I sleeping? What was I eating? Where I was going? I didn't start with it. It's too hard. You're not fat because of what you eat. You're fat because of who you hang out with. We need to stop telling people to diet and tell them to get better friends, right? This is not hard math as someone who's measured this sort of thing. So health, environment, and then travel. Because if you think you're healthy, get on a plane and go 6 hours in any direction. You'll see how healthy you are, right? And environment's really important to measure, because sometimes if you're not sleeping well, there's nothing wrong with you. There might be noise, right? So my calendar went from color-coded and searchable to kind of actionable. I could use this data to start to do more. So I wanted to start to do environmental sensing. So at home, I had this system on my home office, because I would sometimes get in trouble with HR. And what it would do is it would watch my voice tone. So as long as I was staying above 74 decibels, which is a normal speaking tone, everything was fine. But the minute my voice got louder, about 75 decibels, the lights in my office would dim. And what this allowed me to do was create an imperceptible system so that the people on the phone didn't know that I was getting angry, but I did. Because I was starting to, or I had successfully detached from my feelings so much that this was super important. So as this went on and on and on, I was getting more and more, kind of changing. My body was kind of getting smaller. I'd quit smoking. I was off the antidepressants. So I started saying, well, what could I hack spirituality? Could I hack self-love? Self-love is how you talk to yourself. Spirituality is how you get there, and love is what you do with all of that. And for me, I thought this is going to be pretty simple. But I wanted to do something much more profound. So I looked at how data was starting to spread around our lives. These healthcare systems that came online in 2014 had turned into platforms for behaviors. These platforms for behaviors had moved into our homes and cars. I knew people in 2015 who were buying new cars because it worked with their phone. We call that a phone case, not a car. It's one of those talks if you're not catching that. So Cyborg safe, you're safe with me, you cyborgs who are like, come out of your data closets. So from there, I thought to myself, I got to get off this calendar. So I found another system that actually measured and monitored and made this data really beautiful. And of course, by this point, I was kind of in the news. But the last thing I wanted to do to kind of get a hold of this spirituality focus was, what was it about certain pieces of data that made something more memorable, something that was almost magical? So I went back over the last, at this point, 5 or 6 years and started looking at that. So what I did was I created these conditioned routines for my home. And what they would do is they would pull information from past memories that were super good. So for example, we had a Disney routine at my house if things were particularly stressful. So it would grab photos from the Magic Kingdom and map the lights in the house to just subtly have the same shades of Peter Pan or the Magic Castle. Because all the music that I hear passively as I walk on the road were collected, that got turned into automatic playlists that would slowly fade into a room if the day was particularly stressful. The environmental conditions in the house, scents, even aromatherapy would come on. And then finally, even food we ate at the park would be delivered to the house. My family got really overwhelmed because suddenly memories would start to play in the house and everyone would just find this so amusing and so much fun. Because so much of what we take as just data we throw away are what we literally used to call memories. So from there, I wanted to find better ways to actually deal with some of my earliest problems, like social media. So I found this great little plugin that kind of fixed Facebook for me, and I always encourage people to try this out. The problem with Facebook is it's not really bad. The metrics make it bad, the dates, the times. And what this plugin does is it takes all the things your eyes go to and removes them so that you don't see them. So when you use the plugin, suddenly there's no likes, no comments, no dates. Instead of saying this 2 hours ago, it just says recently. See, the thing is, we've got to learn to be friends with people and not popularity. Because these systems are training us to look for things that will help us consume information faster. And I can tell you one thing I've learned in 10 years of doing this: tech can be good or it can be easy, but it can't be both. Uber is easy, it's not good. Okay? It can be good or it can be easy, it can't be both, right? So how do we start to make sense of all this, and how was I making sense of it? So for me, by 2016, I'd been single and I was about to meet someone finally after years of dating and never being successful. Was how did I merge all these things together? How did I merge the systems that made sense to me with Maslow's hierarchy of needs and really kind of bring together this version of myself that I wanted to start to explore? See, because I'd done a really good job of understanding all the independent behaviors, whether they be physical or behavioral, biological or mental, and how they influenced me throughout the day. I had taken control of the internet. I call it the internet, right? But I was missing something super, super fundamentally important. And that was, there's a difference between the quantified self and the qualitative self, right? And the qualitative self is what you measure, what you feel, how those things work through your lives. So how do I merge these two systems of being a more mindful cyborg into the world? By the way, is this interesting? Okay. I never know, because the lights are bright, you could be out there sleeping. Which sleep is important. I would encourage you to sleep for the last 5 minutes. You can. Friends and sleep will make you fat. Love. So one of my favorite apps I use nowadays, I always recommend people, something called Life Cycle. And it keeps this donut of your day and just keeps track of where you are. It allows you to go in and actually tag things with how you were feeling when you're there. What I think is amazing about this is instead of getting apps or updates saying you didn't walk enough today or stand up, you get updates that saying you're 2% below your love threshold, right? You're 5% below talking to strangers. You're 10% less this week of mind, body, and self-care, right? So it's basically the same messaging that we normally would do for biological health, for mental health. But I went further than that. I renamed all my devices, because I connect, we always are connecting to things and airdropping. I named them to the things I wanted to remember and to value. So my watch was called Tenderness. My home computer was called You Were Always Home. My phone is called You Were Loved. So people on the trains are always like, whose phone is called You Were Loved? And I'll raise my hand. They're like, oh, that's so nice. I'm like, well, you are, But we're missing an opportunity to use our devices and our connectivity for something so much more profound than the silliness of trying to make you temporarily healthy for a life that's going to end anyway. All right? And I think it's so important that we get somebody in the world who's saying, there's another way through, right? So I finally met someone, his name is Fernando. met him in 2016, we got married, and I learned one of my most important lessons with Fernando. Fernando is a school teacher, and we'd been going out for maybe a year, and he'd keep sending me these selfies. And these selfies, I thought, I know what the guy looks like. I don't need to see pictures of him, right? And I thought, well, it's just a younger person thing. Younger people, they like selfies. I was doing that whole old man thing where I was thinking about, like, well, why do they do this? And then one day during dinner, he said to me, how come you never say anything about the photos I send you? I'm like, well, I know what you look like. You're attractive. I don't have to. And he goes, some of them are so hard to do. What I didn't realize was he was actually, in these still photos, putting little kisses or putting little messages, because I didn't think to play the live photo at this point in 2016. And at that point, I thought to myself, it's just natural for him to embed love in technology, just like it was natural for me to embed beliefs and habits in technology. So I'll tell you one thing right now. The human heart's much faster than silicon. And if you're worried about the world ending because we're distracted by our screens, I got news for you, it's not gonna happen, right? We are seeing things with young people now in the way they use technology that's provocative. So then I started using the systems in the house to send messages of love and support when I was away, so that he'd automatically get these messages. I then went and took all the geofences that 10 years ago used to remind me not to drink, and they would remind me to talk to the cashier, who I'd become accustomed to ignoring because there were so many pieces of technology between me and the cashier at the grocery store, right? And these people are starving and empty. They want to be talked to. And then even if I was mobile ordering, which I'm really firmly against, I would always put in the special instructions for the techs, for the cooks at these places, right? There's an opportunity to assert your humanity in every piece of technology that's easy and make it good. And I think we don't talk about that a whole lot. Lastly, I found this great little plugin because I love to shop, right? And what it does is it takes all these, any site you go to, whether it be Amazon or it doesn't really matter, any place you shop, and it takes all the prices and automatically converts them to the time you have to work to buy that thing. So my entire family for 2 years has shopped by time. Because if we like spending time together and doing things, we can't stop looking, we have to stop looking at prices and look at hours, right? Again, same data used differently. Welcome to actual connected health, right? So finally, the last thing I did was I replaced every battery and time on all my systems with my life clock. So that's 59% of my life I've used. Actually, as of now, I'm 61%, so when I first took this screenshot. And even my watch and my phone send me push messages based on my behavior if I've added or subtracted life in real time. And it's exciting because sometimes people will get they'll be really stressing me out, my heart rate will go up, and I'll get a message saying, you know, you've just lost 3 minutes of your life, and I'll just go, look what you're doing. And that's where we're heading, right? Because I mean, you know, taking screenshots of your data into your doctor is so yesterday, you know? You're killing me, you know? It's just so much more effective. So if we look at this whole journey, it's pretty remarkable, and of course I did it to myself and my family, but I'm gonna share something with you guys I normally don't share. I've never shared it before. I'm gonna share it today. There's more to the story now. So after getting married to my husband, Fernando, I got to meet and become part of his extended family. My mom and dad have passed away some time ago. And Antonio, dad there, he's 61, 62, hardest working man, you know, 12-hour days. You know, his family thrives on overtime pay. Right? That's how they actually make ends meet. Mom's never really worked. Mom's, you know, she likes to eat and have her cerveza. It's all good stuff. Well, they don't have a lot of time for health in their life. And recently, Antonio had to go have his shoulder have surgery on it. And he doesn't like pain medicine. He doesn't like admitting that he's in pain. He doesn't like anything. So what I did was I took all the kind of goodness that I'd learned about myself and put into practice with other companies when I do consulting and stuff, and built him this little system. And it was really simple, because when he got home from the hospital, he had like 15 pages of instructions and 5 different medicines. It was too much, right? And it was just way too much. So what I did was I used this little teeny app platform called Airtable. It's dumb. It's like a fancy spreadsheet. And we put a shortcut on his phone. And what he would do is he'd get a reminder every now and then to launch the shortcut, or we'd set the shortcut would just launch using Siri shortcuts. He would then fill out a little form, and if he didn't fill out a form, we'd get an update. But then when he filled out a form, depending on what he picked, we would tell him then to pick a therapy. And this therapy would pop up and he'd say what he was supposed to take, and we had the labels color-coded so mom and him didn't have to really think about it. And then from there, we would get a log in the background knowing how he was doing that we would automatically share with his doctor, and we would send him reminders using Alexa when he had actually met his goals for the day of taking his medicine and being really good to himself. And this taught me this really profound lesson about like how we care for ourselves really ends up being about how we care for others. So there's 3 things I want to leave you guys with. We don't get better by counting steps, we get better by taking them. We don't download apps, we download habits. We need to stop valuing our schedules and start scheduling our values. That's a big one. Time has become weaponized. And last but not least, we don't know how to measure what we care about, so we care about what we measure. Thank you so much.